Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Oh, okay. Hello.
Hi. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, everyone, we will ask you to put yourself on mute if you are not already. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Joe, you want to start us off?
Yes, welcome everybody. I'm Joe Cobb. I am chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Commission and a member of Roanoke City Council. I want to welcome you all tonight to our Gun Violence Prevention Commission American Rescue Plan Act Violence Interruption Funding Informational Session, longest title ever. But you are here tonight because you are concerned about the gun violence that we are seeing in our community and how you can be part of the solution. And so I'm grateful for each and every one of you and your presence here tonight. We're going to give you an overview of the American Rescue Plan Act funding and how that process occurred in our city. I'm going to tell you about current activities that the Gun Violence Prevention Commission is doing in the areas of prevention, intervention, and response. And then Angie O'Brien will give more details about the specific grants and show you where on the city's website you can access the application. And then Laura Carini, who's with our city attorney's office, is going to share with us important information about the reporting aspects of these grants. So tonight, we're going to be talking about two different grants. One of them is the second in a series of mini grants. Some of you will recall that last summer, the Gun Violence Prevention Commission awarded $65,000 into the community for 17 nonprofit organizations to do programs that occurred during the summer. With these rescue plan dollars, we are going over the next 3 years to do $100,000 per year in mini grants. The base funding will be $5,000 and they may go up to as much as $10,000 depending on the number of applications and grants that we're able to award. The second series of grants are violence interruption proposals. And these are going to be a larger amount over a two-year period. So the baseline funding will be $25,000. And depending on the proposals you submit, may go higher in the amount that's awarded. We'll get into a little more detail about each of those grants, but the purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce you to these two grants, how to apply for them, and what the timeline is. So Angie, if you could move to the next few slides. What I want to do is just a brief overview of the current efforts that are underway that are part of our violence prevention framework. I'm going to start with the prevention efforts, then move into the intervention efforts and the response efforts. Some of these are already launched, some of them are ongoing, and some we anticipate launching this year. Connecting in the Star City is a social emotional violence prevention curriculum being offered in partnership with Family Service of Roanoke Valley and being offered in multiple after-school programs reaching up to 80 youth. The reading program at Lincoln Terrace, which is pairing community volunteers with second and third graders, is underway. There is still room for volunteers to participate in this program. If you'd like to sign up, and you can reach out to me. My email will be included at the end of the presentation. We're working on developing in collaboration with RVTV3, which is a local government and regional regionally supported television network to create a series of parent support educational videos to offer support to our parents and families who are struggling with a number of the issues that are contributing to gun violence in the community. The annual Bridging the Community Gap event, which we have in December, is an ongoing event. You can go to the next slide. Many of you are aware that we have a new youth and gang violence prevention team. Chris Roberts is the coordinator of that team. Antonio Stovall is one of our outreach workers. We are in the process of hiring a second outreach worker to complete that team. Some of their current efforts include daily community outreach with youth and families to address and break the cycle of gang violence, establishment of a Real Talk program with youth at Melrose Library, African American Cultural Studies course in collaboration with TAP and William Fleming High School. That has actually grown under Antonio's leadership to include 2 classes. There is an additional class that he's leading on self-mastery at Noel C. Taylor Academy. And Chris is working with a number of credible messengers. These are persons who've emerged through the justice system and who are wanting to give back in positive ways to the community. It's a group called Mind Movers. If you know of folks for whom that would be a good match, I would encourage you to reach out to Chris. That's essentially going to help form a violence interruption team. We have completed the youth and gang violence community assessment that's been presented in a number of groups and to City Council. We will continue to build on some of the strategies and findings identified in that study. We are finishing up the process of identifying a community marketing partner to help us launch a comprehensive gun violence reduction marketing campaign, which will begin with a discovery phase, but we hope to roll out some of the early stages of that this year. If you can go to the next slide. Intervention efforts include an agreement with a contract with Better Agreements to do 5 cohorts of 20 people each. This is conflict resolution training for community volunteers. I believe the first cohort may be launching in March. We will continue to offer trauma basics training for community residents and families. We're planning those sessions for the remainder of the year. It's very important to us to respond to what is an increasing need in the community, and that is direct access to trauma counseling and mental health support for persons experiencing gun violence or the effects of it. And so we have some funding dedicated toward that, but we are also establishing community partnerships. Some of this work has already begun with the Youth and Gang Violence Prevention Team and the Reset Coordinator in their work with families, and we intend to build on that. We are also supporting local mentoring programs with funding and collaborative support. You go to the next one. In addition to that, we are doing youth and young adult employment opportunities. Part of the Star City Safe initiative, which is the whole of government, which includes parks and recreation, the libraries, and general services. We've created an apprenticeship program where young persons are connected with employment opportunities in city departments. And that is being piloted now with great success. And we intend to not only grow that, but work with other agencies in the community who are focused on connecting youth and young adults with employment opportunities. We're creating a series of youth and young adult quarterly roundtables to assess local impact of prevention and intervention efforts. The first roundtables are scheduled for March 21st and 22nd with youth. As I mentioned before, this is the launching of the second round of mini grants to be awarded to nonprofit and faith-based organizations for gun violence prevention and intervention programs. Next slide. Current response efforts include our RESET team, which is rapid engagement of support in the event of trauma. This team is coordinated by Lloyd Merchant and is comprised of community volunteers. They are deployed after incidents of gun violence to go into the affected neighborhoods, to visit with neighbors, business owners, and others that they work with. They're doing extraordinary work, and they're always open to additional volunteers. We are continuing to develop a coordinated rapid response effort in collaboration with Carillion and other community partners so that we are on the front end of responding to families and those who are affected by gun violence. We're continuing to grow our efforts to make sure that resources are available for these families. And as a part of this, we're supporting the work of Fed Up, Families Experiencing Deliverance Using Prayer, which is a group of women primarily who have been doing this work for over a decade to provide support and encouragement and resources to families affected by gun violence. All right, next slide. So at this point, I'm going to turn the program over to Angie, who's going to give us an overview of our current pandemic relief funds.
Thank you, Joe, and good evening, everybody. I wanted to extend my thanks as well for you joining us tonight. And what I want to do is kind of give you a background on the American Rescue Plan Act and the resources that have been made available for violence interruption in the community. And so with that, it's important that you understand how this funding came available for use. So as you all know, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic in March of 2020. The governor at the time also declared a local state of a state of emergency for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the city of Roanoke declared a local state of emergency. And this enabled us to be able to secure resources, especially at our local level. During 2020, with the passing of the CARES Act, the city received $17.5 million. That summer, the Star City Strong Recovery Fund was developed. And this is the fund account where our coronavirus relief funding really sits in an account with the city. We first received the $17.5 million. And from that, the Star City Strong task force was developed. And they made recommendations for the use of the $17.5 million. And those that was divided up into several different categories, which were local economy, a safety net, youth and education, essential services, and public safety. And again, those were made due to the CARES Act. The city also decided to approach the health crisis in 3 phases: the response, recovery, and resiliency. And kind of where we are now is still recovering, but also creating a more resilient community. In the early part of 2021, the city was notified that we were going to be receiving, after the passing of the American Rescue Plan Act, that the city was going to be receiving $64.5 million over the next 2 years. To accompany the city's $64.5 million, Roanoke City Public Schools also will be receiving $51 million. So together we have over $115 million coming into the community for us to become a more to transform the lives of the community, and for us to be a more resilient community and really shielded from future pandemics or emergency crises, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. So after the city received or notified that we were going to be receiving the funds, over the summer of 2021, city administration, accompanied by city council members, met with focus groups, over 100 different stakeholders in the community, to brainstorm ideas on the best uses for the American Rescue Plan Act funds. From those focus groups, the Star City Strong Recovery and Resiliency Advisory Panel was created. And this was a 36-member advisory panel that was appointed by City Council, who worked all through the month of August and the first part of September to decide on the best uses for the American Rescue Plan Act funds. This group, as I said, through the month of August and September, made these recommendations to City Council, which was ultimately approved by Council. And so the way the funding was broken out this time is into 3 different categories, which were people, places, and governance. And of people, places, and government, subcategories also were created for recovery items and resiliency items. So out of people, you'll see that the opportunities on the screen in front of you, and I won't read those all, but I will let you know this is where the violence interruption was, and this was noted by the advisory panel that this would be what they considered a big lift item. So this was a larger amount of money that was coming toward this initiative out of the people category. Additionally, there was places, and again, you can see kind of in front of you the different ways that the advisory panel made the recommendations for the uses of those funds. Many of those, like with people, we've already started carrying out those recommendations, some of which are a slower burn, and it'll take us a little while longer to accomplish those tasks. Again, here in governance, you can see in front of you, we've had to, just for an example, the city, we've had to utilize some additional PPE, especially with the Omicron surge, and a few other initiatives. So again, you can see in front of you those opportunities that we're carrying out. Currently, what is available through the city of Roanoke for grant opportunities, there's some opportunities still left for small businesses to obtain grants, nonprofits to obtain grants, mental health and substance abuse organizations to obtain grants. Newly on this website, and again, as what Councilmember Cobb indicated, that I'm going to give you a walkthrough, but as of today, the violence interruption grants are available on our website as well. And again, we'll continue conversation about that a little bit later. I'm going to turn this over to Laura Carini, and she's going to go over the expectations and reporting obligations that you all will have in receiving the violence interruption grants.
Great, thank you, Angie. As they said earlier, I'm Laura Carini. I'm with the City Attorney's Office, and I will be working with all who are awarded any of these grants, and we will enter into some type of memorandum of understanding agreement for either the mini grant or for the violence interruption grants. And many of you we've spoken with before on some of these nonprofit grants that we've been doing. So it'll look very similar to the nonprofit grants that have been done, also with the mini grants that were done last year. But with the American Rescue Plan Act, there are some very specific requirements that we will need to obtain from you, and those requirements will be outlined in the memorandum of understanding. And the main ones are always going to be keeping records, and then the reporting requirements. And those look a lot different from grants that we've done before. There will be quarterly updates, and then also a final written report that will be much more detailed. We are going to be looking for, of course, how you spend your expenses, a financial breakdown of exactly how you spent the money, but then also you want to capture, the story of how you spent those funds and what programs you were able to fund, and who are the people that you served in our community? How are you able to impact them? So we want to tell that story by, describing the demographics that of the community that was served, talk about testimonies and stories and pictures, even just to help us tell that story. And then finally, we're going to be looking for performance measures for you to establish those performance measures, set those goals, and then report on how you were able to achieve those throughout the either the mini grant, the short period of time, or the violent interruption will be the about 1.5 years. But we will work with you individually once we get to this point and provide that information. We'll also be hiring a staff member, hopefully within the next few weeks or so, and that person will really be helping to gather this information and work with the recipients of the grants to help with these reports. And also there will be a training requirement for organizational capacity coaching type training, just to be sure that, we're not just giving these funds out as a one-time thing. We want to be sure that all organizations that we provide funds to can be sustainable and that they'll thrive in the future. And especially if we have another disaster, whatever that may be. So you'll get much more information about all of this, but just to be aware that if you're applying, that you'll have these requirements if you receive an award. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so what I want to do now is just take an opportunity to kind of talk about what the City of Roanoke's gun violence framework is. And this is probably something that you've heard several times in the community, especially if you've been vested with our response as an organization. So just so you all know, we have all of these moving pieces within our gun violence framework. We've got our Roanoke City Police Department's response, the reset response that Joe mentioned, talking about Lloyd Merchant a few minutes ago. We've got the Gun Violence Prevention Commission and all of those efforts that the commission is working on and sponsoring in various ways. We've got the Youth and Gang Violence Prevention Unit, or the Violence Reduction Team that, again, Joe spoke about with Chris Roberts and Antonio Stovall. And then the Star City SAFE, which is a whole of government's response to gun violence. And you may not be quite as familiar with this this response, but this is, we've got some department leadership in various different departments in our organization who have focused on kind of stepping outside of their normal day-to-day work and are taking a stab at reducing violence and working with the youth in various ways, such as teen mentorship, teen apprenticeship responses, and later night hours at the public libraries and Parks and Rec extended hours as well. And then there is, as you all see, that you as community are also listed on this gun violence framework, as we know it's going to take all of this and more to help prevent and intervene with gun violence in our community. So with the violence interruption, as I indicated earlier, it was a big lift by the Star City Strong Recovery and Resiliency Advisory Panel, and the recommendation was for $2 million to go toward this effort in the community. And on the screen in front of you, again, you've probably seen a different document of this. I kind of made it. I shortened some of the request types over there just so it's just so it could all fit on the screen and you could view it more legible. But this is where the dollars, the $2 million are going toward with the violence interruption. And I've highlighted in yellow what we're talking about tonight, which is the gun violence prevention mini grants and the Gun Violence Prevention Commission interruption proposals. So with the gun violence mini grants, the grant applications, we've have a deadline on here is Thursday, March 31st, 2022. All the applications will need to be submitted on the website by that time. The gun violence mini grants are an award amount between $5,000 and $10,000. And they are to be completed by all of the projects or efforts or initiatives that you receive funding for need to be completed by Thursday, December the 1st, 2022. And that is with the final report to our office by that date. The award amount you'll see is a range of $5,000 to $10,000, and the $10,000 reward is for those collaborative. And Joe might want to, I don't know, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about the collaborative efforts after I get done with the violence interruption screen?
Certainly. One of the things that was really beneficial about the mini grants last year was the number of nonprofits who collaborated with other nonprofit agencies or organizations in the city to expand their reach. That's what we're looking for. We want the reach of these grant dollars to extend into the community as far as they can. A number of proposals that were submitted last year, there was a lead organization, but then there were other organizations that were brought in, whether they were providing guest speakers or whether they were helping co-sponsor an event, or whether they were adding another resource to the experience. So really think creatively in terms of how you can work with other partners, and particularly for the larger grant, the violence interruption grant, which is more intervention based. Think about organizations that you can team with to not only expand the reach in the community, but to extend that collaboration. So collaboration is important. You know, some organizations do well on their own, but we know as Roanoke that the more we work together, the greater impact we make.
Thank you. So with the violence interruption proposals, again, the grant application due date is Thursday, March 31st, which is the same as the mini grants. The award is a $25,000 baseline award, and that is to be completed by Friday, December the 1st of 2023. So there is a longer period to expend those dollars on those projects and initiatives. And as Joe indicated just a minute ago, the $25,000 is the baseline for this and for those collaborative projects that could be increased.
Angie, if I could add one other thing here, I think another important aspect of all of this, particularly with the violence interruption proposals, is that when you're thinking about programs that you are developing, identify how they're sustainable. We want to make sure that the most effective programs are ones that can be sustained over a long period of time, because any prevention and intervention work that we do needs to be sustainable. This is not a short-term effort. This is a long-term effort. And if we're going to make the kinds of significant changes that we need to make in the community, we're going to need to be at this effort over the next, not only 2 or 3 years, but the next 5 and 10 years. So keep that in mind.
Thank you. Great point. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to apply. I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen for just a minute and pull up the website. Okay, so this is in, you will make sure that you all have access or this website to go to, but it's right off the city's page. It's the Star City, and if you just put into Google Star City Strong Recovery, it should pull this up here in Roanoke City. So this is the website where our applications are. Again, this is where all kinds of great information is on this page about the city's American Rescue Plan Act funds. As you see, here is our response, recovering resiliency, and a lot of saved documents and stuff like that if you're interested in hearing more about that. But again, on this website right here, click here to access the ARPA applications. This pulls up another screen. I will say that it is important. We strongly suggest you use Google Chrome. That is the browser the applications work best in. Please do not submit your application using an Apple product, or at least in the Safari browser. It will not go through. So again, these are all of the opportunities that we have available. The arts and culture, those deadlines have passed, but as far as all these others, those opportunities still exist. You're going to click on the violence interruption tab, then it pulls up this application. You that link to pull up the application, you click on that. Here at the top is some information that was on the press release, specifically toward violence interruption, the prevention, intervention, and response efforts that we are looking for in the mini grants or violence interruption proposals. We're going to ask that you put all of this here is all mandatory fields. You're just going to fill this out here up at the top where it says sign in, create an account. You do not need to do that. So you're just going to come down here. You'll start filling out your application. Here is where you will specify that you are applying for a gun violence mini grant or the violence interruption proposal. So you will select one or the other there. We will ask for you to tell us exactly what you're asking for, what your expected outcomes are. This is not going, these two right here are not going to prevent you from being able to obtain the grant award, but we are asking you if you are registered with sam.gov and what your DUNS number is. Listed here is also your, what Laura went over, some of the reporting responsibilities and requirements are listed here, and this will also be on that MOU or that contract that we have with your organization. That is all the application is. We're going to have you agree and electronically sign, pick the date and time of your application. And please don't forget to hit submit. It's down here in the bottom left-hand corner, but I've spoken with many folks who have missed that submit, and I just want to make sure that you all see that and hit the submit button. You can always contact my office and I can confirm whether or not we've received the application or not. I will gladly be able to do that for you really quickly. And I'm going to go back into the PowerPoint. And that is how simple it is to fill out the grant application. It is very simple. We've made it as simple as we can. Here on this PowerPoint are the two links that you have access to. But again, like I said, if you just go to the city's website or even just put in Google Roanoke Star City Strong Recovery, and it'll pull up immediately the grant opportunities. And in front of you is Councilmember Cobb's email address, my email address, and also Laura's email address. And if you don't want to write all three of those down, you can just email us at gvpc@roanokeva.gov, which is the Gun Violence Prevention Commission email address.
And we threw in a little test on this one to see if you would catch it. After Laura Carini's, it should say Roanoke, not Roanoke.
Laura works for us too. She doesn't work for Roanoke.
So Angie, thank you and Laura, thank you for that overview. We want to allow some time for questions that you may have. I would suggest that we can do this a couple of ways. You can either put your question in the chat and I'll keep tabs on that, or you can unmute and just identify yourself and ask your question. The first question has come in. The question, Angie and Laura, is the application doesn't appear to offer a lot of room to submit a fully developed proposal. Will there be a place to submit documents?
Yes. If I'm not mistaken, there should be some information on that screen that indicates where you can send additional information. And because we will ask for additional information, we definitely receive ongoing information from those folks who have needed to either strengthen their proposal or their request for funding or not. But yes, you can definitely either send that to the Gun Violence Prevention Commission email address, one of us directly, or there, like I said, there may be additional information on the website. I'll need to recheck that. A good question.
Many people are asking if you can apply for and receive both a mini grant and an interruption grant.
So with at this point, the answer would need to be no. We've had several organizations who have applied for, say, a mental health substance abuse grant or a nonprofit grant. And at this time, we are only awarding one grant per organization. Now, I'm not saying that won't change in the future, but as of today, we would encourage you to choose one or the other.
Heather Miller asks, it would be great to be able to connect with others on the call to see how we may collaborate. I agree with that. I think there are a couple of ways we can do that. We have a pretty comprehensive list of youth service providers. And one option is that we could schedule a subsequent meeting to this, and anyone who wants to be a part of that to just brainstorm strategies and ways to collaborate. I'd certainly be willing to host that on behalf of the Gun Violence Prevention Commission. If everyone's okay with it, we could also share the list, and then you all could just reach out to those that you think you have some alignment with to share information with. So I'm glad to do either one. Is there a ceiling on interruption grants? That's a great question. The ceiling is probably going to be $50,000, which would allow us to award at least 8 grants in that category. Now, I will say this, depending on how many proposals we receive in that category, we may adjust that, but the initial range we've talked about is a baseline of 25,000 with the potential of a cap of 50. But I think pending the proposals we get, we may look at adjusting that. These grants are eligible for nonprofits and faith-based organizations. So please keep that in mind. If your organization is not a 501c3, sometimes faith-based organizations have foundations or separate nonprofits that they've created. But let's say you're just with an organization that wants to make a difference. This is a great way to partner with a nonprofit that already has their 501c3 and have them serve as the fiscal agent for this. Where would we be able to find the current data on gun violence in the city? That's a great question. I share that out regularly with our youth service providers, but what I can do for everyone who's registered for tonight, we have, I think, Angie, we've captured all of those email addresses. Is that correct?
Yes.
I can share out the data that we receive for the Gun Violence Prevention Commission, which is can provide a summary of last year's report from the police department as well as year to date this year. And and then additional, I can send out the youth and gang violence community assessment, as well as the recently completed youth risk behavior survey that was done with Roanoke City Public Schools and Blue Ridge Behavioral Health. Just for clarity, if you have received funds from Roanoke City in the first cycle of ARPA grants, you aren't eligible for either of these opportunities. No, that's incorrect. You can still apply for these opportunities. If we have received funding from the nonprofit ARPA funding already for one program, yes, these programs are specifically gun violence prevention or violence interruption specific. So you may apply for these, even if you've received funding in another area. These are great questions. And you can also submit questions after this meeting. We are recording this. And so once this meeting is complete, we will post the recorded session on the website. And we can also make it available, the link available to all of you.
May I ask the question?
Sure.
What is the turnaround time? If you submit an application and it's approved, what is the turnaround time for the 501c3 to receive the funds?
So our plan is, with the deadline being March 31st, our plan is to gather all of the applications, and our intention is to review them during our April Gun Violence Prevention Commission, which is the second Tuesday of April. Once we confirm which grants will be awarded, the organizations will be notified, and Angie and Laura will work with each organization to create an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. So Angie and Laura, you can help me here, but I would say that this money could be out to you and available sometime in May. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. So with the commission reviewing the proposals in April, after they're reviewed, Laura and I will take a look at them. We will set up individual meetings with all of you. If you've been through this with Laura and I before, you know how that will work. Following that, it goes to the city manager for the final signature. And as long as Laura and I have done our due diligence and the commission has done theirs, then we'll move forward with executing payment. And so, yes, I think to Joe's thought on that, I think, yeah, no later than the end of May would be what I would expect for payment.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move as quickly as we can on this because we want to get these funds out into the community to do the work that you all want to do.
Thank you.
To Brenda's question, it will be important for us to know the start date, as our proposals could be different depending on that date. That's accurate, and that would be determined in the MOU with Angie and Laura. Question from Doug Pitzer. Would anyone be interested in a follow-up meeting for networking and brainstorming? He's entered his email there. Doug, I think one of the ideas that I'm hearing some consensus around is to hold a subsequent brainstorming collaborative conversation with anyone that's interested. I will work with Angie to set a date for that within the next week. I can't give you a date tonight, but we'll host, the Gun Violence Prevention Commission will host a brainstorming meeting, hopefully within a week, and we'll send out the date for that, and we'll do it virtually. Thank you, Susan. What types of intervention efforts are you hoping to see? Angie, do we have that? Could you pull up the website again? We've got a breakdown of some recommended areas.
Yes.
On the application page, and I'd like to just review those briefly. These are just some recommended areas. They are not fully inclusive. So this is where your creativity is really critical.
Joe, this is Nicole. While Angie is getting that up, is it possible that maybe we can do a Google Doc similar to what we did for the CARES funding, where all the organizations put their information in, what services they provided? I think that might be helpful in us all being able to visually see what each other is doing.
Yeah, what I can do is take the list of providers that I have that and make sure that everyone on this call tonight is included in that, and turn that into a Google Doc or a Google Sheet with, and what it would include is the organization that we have you currently listed with, and your email address. And then it would allow you all to fill in the gaps in terms of what programs and services you currently provide. That's a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah, that was helpful with the other, so I just thought we might could do that.
Okay. All right, so there are kind of 6 key areas. And again, these are not, these are ideas. One of the things that is important about violence interruption is that, it's really got to focus on public health. These are efforts to interrupt or disrupt violence, to stop it. So when you think about, there are teams, for example, within a number of cities that are trained in conflict resolution and mediation. Many of them have cell phones or hotline numbers. And if there is anticipated violence or conflict, these teams are sent out to intervene in safe ways and respectful ways, but to try and redirect that energy. These are, in larger cities, these are highly trained teams who do this work. One of the reasons that we've focused these initial cohorts on conflict resolution training is to equip a larger team of community volunteers who are trained in conflict resolution. But we want to be able to expand this out to families. If families can identify meaningful ways of resolving conflict before they lead to violence, that's what we want to do. So that's one form of prevention, but it's also a form of interruption. So youth development is a big area. This could include educational programs and after-school programs. It can include mentoring. One of the things that our youth violence prevention team has been working on is, as they work directly with youth and their families, they're seeking to match mentors with these youth so that they have someone in addition to their family that can be an ongoing source of support for them as they work toward redirecting their energy. Educational opportunities. This could be life skills training. It could be workforce training. In anything that kind of falls in that realm of teaching kids to understand their identity, their purpose, their focus in life. One of the things that Antonio does really well in his classes is connecting, particularly African-American youth, connecting them with their history, with their culture, with their sense of identity. We want, of course, every young person to have that. But when this is, when a connection has not been made in a young person's life, that can be a missing piece. And the earlier we can start this, even in elementary school, the better. Training programs, these could include workforce training. There's a collaboration currently taking place between Goodwill and the Youth Build program and Build Smart Institute. Organizations like TAP have workforce training things that and employment opportunities that they're working on. Many of your organizations are already doing some of this work. Conflict resolution. If you want to partner with, for example, Better Agreements, who's doing these conflict resolution training cohorts for volunteers, they are also doing some work in our schools. If you want to partner with them to do specific conflict resolution training for youth or young adults, that's a good opportunity. And then the whole area of trauma-informed care. Our community is reeling from trauma. Our community is reeling from pain. And anything we can do to invest in healing-centered work, trauma-informed work, to equip people with not only recognizing where there's trauma and pain, but how best to respond to it in a way that doesn't re-traumatize somebody or connects them with access to services. Scholarships. You know, we often hear about programs that are available and they're outstanding programs, but many of our youth aren't able to afford the programs. So we want to eliminate those barriers. So you could provide scholarships to a program as part of your grant proposal. Mental health counseling for families impacted by violence. This is an extraordinary need in our community. That is not only identifying agencies that have staff that can provide this counseling or independent LCSWs or licensed counselors, but connecting youth and families with these resources. And doing so in a way that, you know, lack of insurance is not a barrier. Lack of cost is not a barrier. We really need to get people connected with these resources. And so if you see this as a priority area, it's certainly a way that you could support that through a grant or proposal. Youth employment and entrepreneurship. This is one of the things we hear regularly. Perhaps you want to partner with another agency that has jobs available, and you want to help make sure that youth who have transportation barriers, that transportation is not a barrier. You're either covering the cost of transportation or making sure that that youth have access to employment, that they have access to entrepreneurial training. And then Chris Roberts is a great person to reach out to. Chris and Antonia, they've got some programs underway, some of which I mentioned earlier. Maybe you want to partner with them to expand a program. Let's say you're a faith-based organization and you have a great physical facility. You have space where a program could be held. You could connect with Chris and Antonio and explore what would be a good program that we could host at our facility, reaching out to youth and young adults that we know and could engage in these programs. That's a great partnership. You could provide a space. Your grant could help cover some of the costs of that programming, or bringing in people to help bring their expertise to work with the youth and young adults. So those are just some basic categories that you can consider. Again, they are not exclusive. They can certainly be expanded on. Multiple applications. Karen, could you be part of a collaborative and also get your own grant? Yes. The lead agency might be different than yours, which I think would be important. But, you know, our mini grants last year, I'll give you an example. We had several organizations that last summer did events, and they invited in some of the leadership from Fed Up, families experiencing deliverance under prayer, to be guest speakers, to share their stories. That's a great way to partner. As long as the lead agencies are different, I think that's appropriate. But each of us have different skill sets. Each of us have different levels of experience and expertise. And the more we can work with each other, the better. But what we want to make sure of is that we're not just focused on, 50 youth. If we can reach 300, 500, 1,000 youth, we want to be able to do that over a long period of time. And I'll give you one more example. This last fall, when Elite Business Strategies was doing our youth and gang violence community assessment, they did a number of outreach events at the libraries, and the libraries are fantastic partners. So I'd encourage you to reach out to them as well. But during some of these outreach events, the leadership team from EBS really had some heart-to-heart conversations with our youth and made some connections in a very short time. And one of the requests of the youth was, could we please do this on a more regular basis? We really value the time that you've invested in us, and we need more of this in our lives. So think about how critical it is to not only start a relationship with our young people, but to carry that through. Those kinds of relationships make a huge impact. And we never know what seeds we plant now will bear fruit down the road. And some of the youth and young adults we work with now are going to be doing this same work down the road because they were inspired by you. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, that relationship is key. The ability for us to reach youth and young adults who we already have a relationship with is critical, because we already have that level of trust that they count on. Okay, Jamie's saying, if an agency serves as lead fiscal agent on a collaborative grant, they would not be allowed to write for another grant just for their agency. Is that accurate, Angie?
I'm looking, I'm trying to read it too.
Essentially, one organization cannot be the lead agency to receive funding on more than one grant.
Right.
Let me say it a different way. So if Karen and I want to go in together and write a collaborative grant for Family Service and West End Center and anybody else who wants to get in on that, but Family Service also wants to write a smaller grant request for a specific program, we would not be able to do that if we were the fiscal agent on the bigger collaborative grant, correct?
Right. So like, I guess, let me, Jamie, let me ask you this. So say you and Karen go in together and are requesting a violence interruption proposal grant for $50,000 and that is awarded. No, you would not be also able to get a separate $25,000. Is that what you're, for just yourself?
Yes, or 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever the parameters are. So,
Right.
So in other words, we would sort of sacrifice our ability to fund one program by being collaborative to fund another.
Right, but you would be getting the larger grant, right? So
yes.
you would be getting a $50,000.
Well, we would be sharing it. We would be
Right.
sharing the larger grant, yes.
There's a comment here. Yeah, from BJ Lark. This is a great supportive comment. Let us remember that we are empowering organizations and individuals. Let us remember that there are empowering organizations and individuals, many already in good works and have been for years in this vein. A very special thank you to all of you and newcomers as we are building infrastructure and foundation for a continuum of goodness, especially for our youth and community. Funding is a necessary part of positive, productive change. We all agree our communities can no longer afford the cost of violence anymore, no matter who it is from. That is truth. And I think because of the work we've done over the last couple of years to build this infrastructure of and collaborative spirit, when state funding became available last year, we were able to apply and give evidence up front that we could carry forward the funding in meaningful ways, and that's proven to be the case. So this is just another extension of that. And I will say too that the citizens panel that City Council appointed to determine priorities for ARPA funding did an outstanding job. And the fact that they wanted violence interruption funding to be a big part of this effort is a testament to their commitment to our city as well. All right. Any other questions? So after this, we will post the this webinar on the website. I am going to create, it will not be tonight, it will hopefully be tomorrow, a Google Sheet that has all of your contact information in it and your organizations that I will send out to you all as a shared file that you can then insert the programs that you currently provide. We will also schedule a meeting, hopefully next week, for brainstorming collaborative ideas. We can set that up, Angie, to possibly even do breakout sessions. So if it becomes clear that there are some key areas of focus that you all have, then we can do some breakout groups during the context of that meeting so that you can have more one-on-one conversations. And you're also welcome to do that offline. What else am I missing that we were going to follow up with? The application is live, so you can go ahead and view that now. Oh, one other thing we were going to check. Angie, let's do check to make sure about additional documents. I don't want, while I think we need to be succinct in identifying what we intend to do or be able to say that in a short statement, organizations need to be able to provide supplemental information. And we want to make that as easy as possible for these organizations. So if we can confirm whether they can do that through the application page, or if there's a way for us to add a section for them to just add supplemental documents rather than having to send it to two different sources.
Sure. I just looked, there's not, but there will be. I'll make sure that we have that on there. It's with the other grants. So we'll get that opportunity on the
Okay,
website.
we will get that added, so that will be much easier for you all. We just appreciate your interest in this and your willingness to submit proposals. And we're excited about what we're going to be able to do together. All right. Well, thank you all again. We appreciate each of you, grateful for your hard work. We're already making a difference. We're going to continue to make a difference. Be as creative as you can be. This is about working together, and it's about our youth. It's about our young adults. It's about our families, and making sure they have the resources they need to be as healthy and whole as they can possibly be. So everybody have a great night, and look for follow-up information from us in the next 24 to 48 hours.